Hey, it's Andrew Shadroff, and I chose to analyze the hammer for my commodity chain project. So the hammer can be broken into two outstanding parts, the steel head and wooden handle. Both of those parts come from one raw material each. The steel head comes from iron ore, while the wooden handle comes from a hickory tree. One of the top corporate actors of the iron industry is Vale. Vale is based in Brazil and is independent and privately owned. Vale extracts iron in the biggest mines in the world in the region Carajas, Brazil. Interestingly, about a year ago, I was heavily invested in Vale on the stock market. Extracting iron out of Brazil goes back to 1500 when, under the Treaty of Tordesillas, Portugal acquired Brazil as a colony. Unfortunately, under Portuguese rule, slavery was the dominant method to extract iron ore. Rio Tinto is the largest corporate actor in Australia. Australia is in the lead as the largest extractor of iron in the world. Most of the operations take place in Western Australia, and approximately 96% of Australia's exports have been iron since the 1960s. Despite common assumptions, iron ore actually comes in the form of taconite and accounts for 30 to 35% of the taconite content. Taconite is very tough to break, so explosives break apart the solid rock into fragments. These fragments of taconite are shoveled into dump trucks the size of houses and taken to processing plants or to train cars. After arriving at the processing plant, the taconite fragments are put through a high-speed rotator machine, seen below in the bottom left, where the fragments are broken down and magnetism pulls the pure iron out of the rock. The small pieces of iron are crushed and turned into powder. For easy transportation purposes, the powder is added to clay and water and rolled into pellets to be loaded onto a ship. The pellets are shipped to mills in the Great Lakes or to China. Now, after the steel pellets arrive at the steel mill, the raw iron is dumped into furnaces rising up to temperatures of 1,650 degrees Celsius. The molten steel is then poured into molds for steel bars typically 24 feet or 36 feet long. Overall, steel workers face brutal conditions: 12-hour-long shifts, explosions of dynamite, falling rock, molten iron, extremely high temperatures, and very unhealthy air quality. U.S. steelworkers make about $20 per hour, while Chinese steelworkers make a disappointing $339 per year. Iron ore extraction and steel manufacturing are very invasive and not so eco-friendly. As the industry runs off gas-powered machinery, they constantly tear through forests and land to extract the precious metal, and often, outside of the US, chemicals and waste products are dumped into the environment. The Iron Age dramatically changed civilizations in Europe and Asia. Weapons were much stronger than their bronze counterparts, iron became really cheap, and agricultural tools carved the way for new farming techniques and our higher efficiency. As you can see in this picture, OSHA was not a thing yet, as these workers are wearing no protective material, no shoes, no goggles, but this brings us back to the always high risks of working in this kind of industry. What's crazy about iron's market price is it is actually determined on the New York Stock Exchange and traded at that price internationally. Recessions hit the steel industry hard as tourism is a big driver of growth. My next raw material is hickory wood from hickory trees. Hickory trees are prevalent in the southeastern region of the United States, and the US dominates the hickory wood market. Hickory wood is one of the strongest woods on earth and is heavily demanded internationally for use in furniture. There are two major corporate actors in the US, Weyerhaeuser and Georgia-Pacific, that operate in the same region. These two companies will buy land privately off the individual or seek acquisition from government or state-owned land. Two revolutionary machines in the logging industry are the forester and harvester. These machines are man-operated and are effective in tree and branch removal as well as transporting the logs. I want to show you a short 15-second clip so you get an understanding of just how efficient this machine is. Sorry about the dramatic music there, but we'll continue. Without machines like the harvester in the video we just saw, or the gas-powered chainsaw, a job to cut down and trim a tree like that would take hours with a handsaw and would be very labor-intensive. After cutting down and debarking the trees, the logs are put on logging trucks to be transported to storage or the sawmill. One of the corporate actors, Georgia-Pacific, has 10 sub-locations throughout the Southeast. All of these sub-locations are sawmills and save the corporation from the profit-cutting costs of long-distance transportation. Banks and lending play a big role in the steel and lumber industry. In the steel industry, typically extraction involves a pool of investors putting money aside for their new business. The pooled money can cover some of the upfront costs, but a loan must be taken to cover all the upfront costs, like acquiring the land, purchasing equipment, hiring a workforce, and covering transportation costs. The loan comes with an interest rate, so the company will have to pay that off too. In the lumber industry, new companies will likely borrow hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to finance all the operations. Some of the major upfront costs of the lumber companies are acquiring land, equipment like saws and harvesters, a labor force, and transportation costs. Since many of the companies take loans, they begin operations with a leveraged balance sheet. High-scale production in these two industries offers many pros and cons, so I decided to outline a few of each. One of the pros would be how many people gain jobs in these industries. In the steel industry alone, 96 million people have jobs, and US workers make a wage of $20 per hour. Unions have been made in both industries, and the workers have many rights. Not to mention, these two industries have massive demand, and the industry itself is sustainable. Another important pro of high-scale production is specialization. These workers have specialized roles in extraction or manufacturing, and efficiency is at an all-time high. With improvement of efficiency comes more profit, and in turn, room for higher wages for the workers. The last pro is the taxation on these industries. The products are easily taxed, and with the size of the tax dollars from these two industries, we can put that money to healthcare, infrastructure, and welfare programs. One of the major cons of high-scale production in these industries is the environmental impact. As I said before, gas-powered machinery, transportation with ships or trucks, and pollutions at processing plants or sawmills has a very harmful impact on the environment. Once the pollution problems become a major issue, the blame is going to be put on massive industries like steel and lumber. The lumber industry is all about deforestation which leads to the loss of habitats and a loss of biodiversity. As I actually learned in my biology class this semester, removing entire forests not only leads to their inability to remove CO2 from the air, but entire ecosystems are permanently changed. Ecosystems can collapse if keystone species die off as a result of deforestation, and we must address this problem sooner than later. That concludes my presentation, and thanks for listening.